We'll call this Joint Tribal Relations Committee meeting to order. To take a roll call.
Senator Barlow,
He's excused.
Senator Salazar,
He's excused.
Representative Guggenmoos,
Here.
Representative Ottman,
Here.
Co-Chairman Case,
Present.
Chairman Posey.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, and audience. We're talking this morning about proposed interim topics for the State Tribal Relations Committee. The first proposed interim topic is gaming and HHR taxes. And Steve Johnson sent a request in. They don't necessarily have to be here.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we can kind of do it whatever we want and handle it any way we want. The idea is just in terms of generality, we would typically have a couple of meetings to set, over the course of the interim, probably a day and a half. We'd like to leave lots of room for updates from tribal governments and tribal people, and then take up a few specific issues that we can plan for, but kind of leave it a little bit open-ended. I think that works the best. So whether someone's here or not, so this is Representative Johnson, right?
Yes.
And he's got a topic of gaming and HHR taxes. What does HHR mean, you guys?
Historic horse racing.
Oh, historic horse racing. Okay.
And
Shows me I don't even go to the casinos. So I'm reading through this topic, and this sounds like a topic involving state of Wyoming administered gambling laws and things. It doesn't look to me like it is a good fit with respect to tribal gaming. But on the other hand, I don't mind talking about gaming in the interim, including one thing that's of concern to me, Mr. Chairman, is people that have problem gambling. And there is kind of a leakage between the programs and advantages they can take advantage of for the state of Wyoming licensed gambling versus tribal gambling. And as I understand, you can be on the you might be on the Northern Arapahoes don't let me gamble list, but you're not on the automatically on the Eastern Shoshones don't let me gamble list. So you can kind of play that out. Anyway, I think there's lots we could do there. Maybe this subject is not exactly on point. I don't wonder what other members would think. That was pretty good. Maybe we could just have gambling as a placeholder and if issues come up. And then we've got this young feller named Ivan Posey who is proposing. What about this one?
Mr. Co-Chairman, that was something that's been discussed probably over 20 years when I worked for Governor Dave Friedenthal about starting the process of a state tribal policy. There are some states that do have policies, and reviewing some of those policies, the strongest one I read as of late is probably the Washington Accord. It's not a policy, it's an accord. And it lays out specific, really specific protocols of how the state and tribes have a relation to each other. I know it's probably a very vast landscape when it comes to common issues, but the accord that I reviewed was really upheld and recognized the sovereignty of the 27 tribes in Washington state. Of course, here in Wyoming, we only have 2 tribes. I think, like I said, it's a pretty vast landscape when we look at what we could start with. Maybe we start with 2 very areas that are on our tribal relations agenda almost every time, and that's education and DFS issues. Obviously, those things when it relates to water rights or jurisdiction, those would be it would take a lot of time to develop policy on those issues. But I think it's probably time, because I think we have a standing agenda items at every meeting. Those are obviously education is one of those. This last year, we looked at jurisdictional issues in law enforcement. And I know there's land issues, but those are really more complex. I envision if we decide to go this route is obviously the councils would be involved, probably their legal people, whoever we decide from the state. And I think it'll be something that could be beneficial whenever this process is undertaken. And I think after I read the Washington Accord, of course, they have a lieutenant governor, which we don't have, but that lieutenant governor is in charge of setting up the meetings and running the meetings, and it's shared with some of the tribal leaders there in terms of moderating those meetings, and I think they meet twice a year. But that's basically it in a nutshell, co-chairman.
Mhm. Questions for Mr. Chairman? Senator Barlow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Actually, I think this is worthy of having at least a overview at maybe our first meeting of what that Washington framework is. And Mr. Chairman, the way I understand it, and I've visited with a few folks and reviewed at least a high-level review of it, it's not actually about the inner workings of a certain policy. It's more of the framework of how you have the conversations, particularly between the executive branch of the state of Wyoming and the tribes, or in their case, Washington State. So it's making sure the right players are at the table when there is an interest in pursuing something, not the outcome, whether it's a natural resource issue. It's not about the outcome. It's about making sure the right people are in place to have the conversations and have the authority to have those conversations. I think that's the way I understand the accord, the framework provides that framework. So I would be very interested in at least exploring it, and maybe even bringing someone in from Washington to kind of outline how that works for them. Thank you.
It's okay, we'll put that on the list. Back to your meeting.
Hey, co-chairman, Case, thank you. And I think we have somebody, or is there any public comment from anybody on this issue before we move on? If not, we'll go to Mr. Sarles.
Mr. Chairman, he is not online at this time.
Okay.
We have a business council member.
Okay, one more time before he's online. Is there any public comment on this? And those policies are different from 280 states, which regards law enforcement, but I think it's something we could tackle.
And Mr. Chairman, were you also looking for general public comment on the interim or specific to this issue? And I see we're joined by Councilman Wagon. Welcome. Former, how are you? Good to see you.
Mr. Wagon, we're talking, Mr. Chairman, we're talking about state tribal policy, the developmental one. If you'd like to make comment, or we're taking public comment now.
Sure.
Oh, good morning, co-chairman and, oh, it's on.
Oh, it's on.
Yeah. Good morning, committee. Clint Wagon, have different hats over the years. But I would like to comment on this. I think it's important to have, I think, these topics and discussions between the state and the tribes, because I think that when you look at a lot of the issues and topics and things that happen, I think as I've talked to my current group that I work with, you know, there may be issues on the state side that are similar to on the reservation side. It might be a smaller realm because of all the counties across the state, but I think when we talk about these, it's very important to address whatever issues that are there, whether it's education, social service, juvenile services, you know, water issues. I think that when you are looking at approaching those, I think that keeping in mind, you know, the tribal members also are Wyoming citizens. And so I think that when we look at that, there's common ground of whatever discussion we're having, especially with these topics that I think are important moving forward. Because, you know, for me, education is one of the ones that I look at, and I know I've watched a few of the education sessions. And so I think that there's still a learning curve that's happening that I know we talk about attendance there, they talk about the scores, this, that, and other, but at some point, I think in the education realm, there's gonna have to be kind of moving away from the test side of things and actually looking at teaching in the sense of what's missing. Because I think that it's not just attendance, but when you look at subjects, you know, across the board, whether it's handwriting, phonics programs, reading programs, you know, you're looking at all this development for math, science, and I think especially science is kind of getting pushed to the side as well as trades in the schools, you know, being able to have the ultimate outcome to look at these things for, you know, students to succeed, because not everybody's going to a 4-year. And I think that you have to also look at trade schools and somehow integrate the trades inside the schools as well, from when they're junior high school, moving up to, you know, give them that opportunity in the sense, as well as the military. I think, you know, one of the things that I know I talked with Representative Posey a little bit about is I think an ROTC program in the reservation schools, I think would be also another option, especially when you look at the veteran side of stuff. And so my comments on that, I think, you know, are important, as well as when you kind of move the other scopes of whether it's, you know, a little bit on the wildlife, the migration stuff, you know, everything that's going on with outdoor activities. And I know that, you know, real quick, the current WRDF program is doing a good job of trying to initiate upgrading some facilities and stuff. And so, you know, I think that just across the board, as you see, I have interest in a lot of things, but I think if we could get communication and better partnership between the state and the tribes a little more, I think would be, you know, in a positive movement. So with that, I guess, any questions?
Representative Altman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wagon, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, when you were talking about phonics and handwriting and things like that, I definitely, absolutely agree. But do you recall a time that might have been in education and we've kind of drifted off of that? I mean, some of the schools we see that, but
Yeah.
I just like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think I could say probably in the maybe 2015, in that era of when they're really pushing the test scores. And I think the regular home ec programs and all these programs kind of got pushed to the side, because I think they were teaching towards the test and not actually teaching towards skills. And the reason why I say that, I mean, just background, I was on Fort Washakie School Board probably for about 12 years. And so I kind of understand kind of where that went in the sense of teaching the skills, because I think it's important.
Do you, because of new tendencies or new thought processes with testing and trying to evaluate people, What was the nexus for that trend? Was there a reason that was given to say, we're gonna change things up here a little bit?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Ottman, I think to me, and this is again, just my personal feeling, I think that when you looked at the testing and that was the drive behind it. And I think that there was core, I guess, subjects that they really wanted to emphasize at the time, but it was kind of taking away from the other ones, in the sense of especially science. And I think that kind of got pushed, as well as history and some of these things. And for me, it was a concern then, still is a concern now. Because I have a grandson, that lives with me, and I see it in him that he could do a lot of things, but I think with teaching to the test, I think sometimes it doesn't work because I choose to do the other extra work, whether it's the handwriting, teaching them how to, use cursive and doing all these other things that I think are missing in the classroom, because, times tables and division, and he's just a 6-year-old. So my thing is why not give it to him, as well as, the language itself. And so this is a crucial time, especially when the primary grades, I think, is important for, the kids when they really pick up the stuff. But I think that's when it went, is in the early 2000s.
Any other questions for Mr. Wygan?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Wygan, for
Thank you,
your
Mr. Chairman.
testimony. And I think what he mentioned, like in terms of education, we may pass a bill here in legislature. I'm just talking out loud here, but like regarding truancy. But those cases go to tribal court in terms of the enforcement of it on these public schools, whether that's Arapahoe or Wyoming Indian or Fort Wasatch. If they have truancy issues, they go to tribal court, and it just depends how the outcome of those is. And but that's just food for thought. Is he on now?
Mr. Chairman, James Sorrells is not on, but we do have Anita Roman for the Northern Arapahoe Liaison online now.
Okay,
Great.
Dos, Chairman, members of the Select Tribal Committee. Actually, I was just texting James Sorrells. We both requested to testify yesterday and we're not able to get the links. So we'll continue to work with LSO on that. So James, I'm sure he's going to try to continue to get that link. I was lucky too. Thank you for that, LSO. So I did contact the Northern Arapahoe tribe, and I always add at the beginning of everything, I never speak for the Northern Arapahoe tribe, but I speak with them. And so I requested topics yesterday, short notice from council that were on their mind. And, they said that they would love to continue a positive working relationship where we work together. And then the things from past notes was, it has to do with just the fines and the consequences of minors obtaining alcohol. So we will have incidences of minors on the reservation who will be intoxicated and maybe end up in an accident, but there's actually no liquor distribution on the reservation. And so those liquor distributions are in the border towns or in the bars surrounding the reservation. And so maybe looking at what that looks like for an adult who is found to have been providing alcohol to minors. And the fine, I think it's not as high as it should be. And so maybe revisiting that one. And then again, continuing with the continued conversations that you had said with education, but also MMIP. And then solid waste, it kind of fell off last year, but it is something that they would like to continue to discuss. Prior to this administration, the council had done a lot of work working with the state and the county regarding solid waste, and they don't want that conversation to go away with what that looks like, because there's a lot of illegal dumping happening on the reservation. So I apologize. I know that James and I were both trying to get on. Thank you both, chairmans and members of the select committee.
thank you, Ms. Roman. Is there any questions from the committee for Ms. Roman? Well, thank you very much, Ms. Roman, for your comments this morning.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think that's a significant issue about how minors obtain alcohol, not just on the reservation, but all across the state and elsewhere in Fremont County too. So I hope we would add that to our list. Kind of review the criminal penalties and I know that of course liquor establishments, they have some protection through something called the DRAM laws, but it's not ultimate protection. And then I don't know what liability an individual seems like you would have enormous liability if you were to purchase alcohol for a minor, knowingly do that. And then something bad, of course, would happen, which so often does. So I'd be willing to spend some time on that. I think that's a significant deal. And just people know that I used to own a liquor establishment in Lander. I don't anymore. It's possible if I could find a lessee that I would reopen that establishment, but I really think this is an important issue.
Thank you, Co-Chairman Chase. Any other questions? Okay, well, we will move on and
Maybe people in the audience have suggestions, just general suggestions. Oh, and Mr. Sarvel's online now. He is online? Not,
Not at this point, Mr. Chairman.
okay. Are there general suggestions from the audience, Mr. Chairman? We see some old friends here. Former Chairman Ellis is back there in the very corner by the back door. And Mr. Winnie's here. I haven't seen much of you this session. Mr. Winnie, you doing okay?
Mr. Chairman, I've been keeping an eye on those folks over in the house.
Oh, that's good. They're right here. I've got them. Got them under my wings. I would hope that we could have kind of a general, typical topics, and leave room for topics that come up. I don't think the Tribal Relations Committee has to have an overly prescriptive agenda. And if you recall from last year, we actually ended up moving our second meeting closer to the legislative session rather than have it when it was originally scheduled. And I just want to say that I think that worked out in our benefit. It gave us a chance to address the issue of the Indian Child Welfare Act. It also gave us a chance to address a couple other issues that had ripened, over the course. So I hope we'll think about that, just leaving it open a little bit. This is more about relationship and relationship building. And that could be like one of our number one goals. In previous years, we've talked about things like taxation. That hasn't gone away. None of the tax issues have gone away. And if you recall, there was work being done with the tax commission on the reservation. I would hope that maybe we could hear from them about topics that they are interested in us pursuing. We have overlapping, issues about sales tax, about cigarette taxes, and kind of goes on and on about Wayfair-based connections with remote sellers delivering to the reservation. All that is ripe for a briefing and a discussion with the tax commission. I hope we could at least leave some time with that. With regards to the solid waste, immense progress has been made on solid waste. I was really happy. I'm happy to continue that as a topic just to keep a hand on. That is an area of relationship between the county and the tribal solid waste. In the past, we've looked at things like infrastructure, trying to encourage utilities to perform better on the reservation. If you recall, we had this is probably before any of your time, almost, I think, but we had a big effort to get natural gas service to residences on the reservation, which was quite successful. And we worked with utilities to come up with a program where they would extend service and get paid back over a long period of time. I think it worked out very well. There are issues about electricity. We still have the You know, that telecommunications issue that we took up last time was kind of covered up. I didn't feel that everybody was being very forthcoming on that. And it kind of left me in a bind, but I'm not sure I want to go down that road anymore. There are still people on the reservation who had their service interrupted, who have not had any service restored. And still being billed for it. It's crazy. But I think telecom is out the window. I don't know. Anything else? Healthcare? You know, we had the flap at the end about maybe having the legislature cutting or not allowing, accepting federal money that flowed through the reservation for tribal healthcare. That got resolved. It was resolved in a positive way. I don't want to beat that horse anymore. But if there are healthcare issues that we can help with or look at, happy to do that. Anyway, Soros now has his hand up, so he's ready to go.
Good morning, chairmans
Good
and
morning.
honorable committee.
Morning.
My name is James Sarles. I'm the tribal liaison to the Eastern Shoshone tribe out of Governor Gordon's office. Sorry about not getting online earlier. It looks like it got sent to my spam mail. So sorry about that, Eve. And I'm glad I checked it and it was there. So the link was there. So here I am. I missed a lot of it. I think about some of the topics that were could possibly be discussed this year in the interim. Of course, always. I think I heard some of Anita's testimony. Of course, MMIP is always a major one. We did a teen violence initiative. That went well. There's always solid waste is always a big thing. Education, Indian education for all. Of course, healthcare is always a major item. Glad that got restored. And also, the two tribes I think are their CFOs for each of their healthcare centers are working collaborative to I think to join a relationship to probably to get some better facilities. The one at Fort Washakie was 100 years old, maybe more. It's very old. I didn't get to speak with some of the councilmen too much on this, but one of the things that the tribe has done in our own general council has to do with the buffalo bison as wildlife. So that might be something they might want to see happen in moving it up to the state level. But we'll be working with visiting with that on as time goes on. I'm not sure if any of them are online to testify as well. Anyway, with that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Sarles. I know, the relationships between the tribes and the state is, like I mentioned earlier, is pretty vast. I mean, we went over probably 15 items we could have worked on. And maybe, I know I talked about councils regarding the state tribal policy, and they're in favor. But I think if we was to identify one or two we could at least get started on, and they might be the more I shouldn't say easiest ones, because nothing's easy when you come to jurisdiction and sovereignty of both tribes on the Wind River, whether that's education, whether that's um, social services or whatever. But I think there are some things maybe we should identify. The buffalo as wildlife is a big hot issue in our community, as you know. And Representative Ottman and Senator Barlow and I went out and toured last fall and realized the issues regarding that. And that's a very sometimes divisive issue within our own tribal community. But that may take a little bit longer to tackle. But I think Indian Ed for All, we had a testimony this last meeting in January about some of the wording as it relates to the status of Indian tribes. And I know they're deemed as a social class now, but I know one of the ladies that are working on that task force, the tribal task force, which is led basically by Rob Black from the state side, is looking to firm that language up. So there's a lot of issues relating, and I think a lot of that is not too people know too much about us, you know. And I think overall, I think we need to firm some of those up to make that process a little easier when we're all not here 15, 20 years down the road. Thank you, Mr. Sarles.
And thank you, Chairman. Also, committee, if I might add, some of the, when it comes to the policy between the state and the tribe, being the tribal liaison link, we are sort of, we do that. Of course, some of the topics that are discussed, are it can vary from whatever's happening at the state level or with the tribes. So they do get a face-to-face, every quarter. So, and of course, I meet with both sides often. So there is time to gather together some of the topics that can be discussed. But we are that link, so to speak. Thank you. And with that, any other further questions?
Mr. Chairman, I was just hoping to comment maybe on the bison as wildlife concept. And I've been mulling this over since our last meeting and, all the issues and I certainly can understand why the state of Wyoming would not want a designation as bison as wildlife that existed throughout the state, border to border. That makes, I can understand that. But perhaps a limited designation by geographic area could have some advantages for both the tribes, their bison efforts, but also possibly for their neighbors who sometimes, it would eliminate the blame about these are your bison, come get them. I have to prove that you're yours. They get branded, ear tags, all that. That eliminate that, but also give potentially the landowners who's being trespassed on by the bison an opportunity to deal with that situation as they could deal with, we have deprivation hunts for elk around Lander, even late in the season, like in January and things. And I'm wondering, would that be just a better tool for both sides? And if we had a limited designation of bison as wildlife, maybe north of the Wind River, for example, for a certain range, I don't know. I'm just making it up, but I'm saying we don't need a policy that goes all across the state. We could be flexible in our thinking and think about designation within an area. And it might be worth exploring, and it might have benefits for private landowners off the reservation, private land on the reservation, as well as tribal lands. So I don't know if you want to go down that road again, but I think there is room to talk about that. Mr. Soros, you brought that up. Do you think my thinking's on track or not?
Chairman, Senator Case, yeah, I'm sure that's, it's certainly open for discussion. You know, if we have if they have the right people at the table, I'm sure a lot of that is open for discussion to, and probably work it from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Coachman.
Representative Altman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing too that would add on to that is to have discussion about fee lands that are being purchased by the initiative and how that's going to work. I mean, if you want to go down that trail, because there's 2,000 acres already that have been purchased. So, I mean, if we want to do that again, and it was very interesting and it does need, I will add also is that this was one of the topics in this general area that I put on ag. So.
Very good. Did you notice that former Chairman Ellis moved up like 8 rows, 6 rows?
Mr. Chairman, is public comment still open?
Got a green light?
Is public comment still open, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Afi Ellis. I'm just here as a private citizen. But last week I participated with the Leap into Leadership Conference, and we actually had a panel that I had been very excited about putting together for a lot of years. This year it finally happened, but we had various Indigenous female leaders from the reservation come talk about their perspectives, issues that were important to them. So as I was sitting in the back, I just wanted to echo, there was a lot of conversation about the Indian Education Act for All.
Yeah.
And some of the feedback I heard from the audience participants, I talked to a teacher from Rollins who said she really supported that act when it became law. She said she uses all the modules that we all developed when that act first became real. But she said, there's not enough. I need more resources. I want to do a better job. She said, I don't know how to do this better. And so it might be a good time to maybe visit with the Department of Education to see what resources are out there, maybe look at Montana, see if they've been doing things that we could be looking at to just provide that support to teachers who really have embraced that act and want to run with it. So that was my only comment, Mr. Chairman. As I was sitting back there, I just wanted to relay, I was trying to be quiet, but here we are.
But thank you, Mrs. Ellis. I know that's a big issue. I know that I shouldn't say the concept, but the need to spread tribal history throughout the state is the next step. You know, it's kind of working on the reservation boundaries inside the reservation boundaries, but you know, kids from Torrington and like you said, Rollins and Star Valley, that needs to be spread out a little more since it's law. Thank you.
Well, I wonder if we could just kind of get Ian, do you have a feeling that you and your staff might be able to come up with kind of a general plan based on these topics? And then, did we select meeting dates? We did, okay. I recall there were a lot of meeting dates selected. I'm sure we did. And then we would request the standard 1.5 times 2. And last year we were fully, I don't recall any pushback on that. They were trying to cut the number of days for some committees, but we did okay. And this notion of leaving it open to have an open relationship as things come up is kind of important to tribal, I think. So with that, we might be able to sketch something together and
Mr. Chairman.
share a draft with the committee and then see what happens.
Yeah, and I think that's very possible. What we do is simply, we can reference our statutory duties as a select committee, unlike some of the other standing committees, and then leave it at that. And, emerging issues, and then maybe list those education, infrastructure, and leave it open as an emerging issues. That's been something we've done in the past without identifying a lot of specific issues. and Management Council has in the past allowed us to do that.
Sounds good. I think Representative Ottman has a question.
Thank you,
Representative
Mr.
Hall.
Chairman. Could you repeat or advise or tell when the meeting dates are?
Yeah, Eve, you have that?
Mr. Chairman, our meeting dates are set for June 15th and 16th, and then our second meeting date is October 6th and 7th.
You bet.
Is there a location yet?
I don't know that there's a location, but I think Central Wyoming College has worked out to be kind of neutral ground. Do you guys agree on that? Clint, what do you think? Good location. And it's not, there's a little bit more services around than at Frank Wise, which is a good location, but we're crowded at Frank Wise. We have more room at Central Wyoming College. What do you guys think? Let's have both meetings there. And I would hope that we could have cultural events, educational events, like we had the Buffalo tour, which was supposed to be in conjunction with, but ended up being a different date. But like either the night of the first meeting or in conjunction with the meeting somehow. One year we toured pictographs up in the Dinwiddie. We've had dinners with entertainment, kind of receptions with entertainment. So I think that's part of this whole concept of us having good relations. So I hope maybe we can do a little of that.
So I think you're correct, Mr. Co-Chairman. I think, I mentioned last year, but because of some issues that came up with the tribe is to have meetings outside the reservation. I still truly believe that at some point, I think perhaps we could have a tribal relations meeting in Lusk or Gillette or something, because sometimes we, and I'm speaking here aloud again, but I think sometimes we vote on things that some legislators know nothing about when it comes to tribal affairs or tribal issues or the coordination between the state and the tribes. But that's a discussion we could have later on. I'm fine with the meeting dates and the place for this year.
And I hear what you're saying. I recall that we have had a tribal relations committee here at the Capitol. It was well attended by the business councils. This was quite a few years ago. But I always worry about tribal people making it to the meetings as well. And when you are far away, there's that aspect. So it's hard. But anyway, so the second dates were 6th and 7th of October. Yeah. 15th and 16th of June and 6th and 7th of October.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Just a comment. I understand what you mean about getting around the state to have other people possibly come to the meetings and to listen. But what I'll also say is that I was amazed at our last meeting, the number of members that came and the conversations that we had. I thought they were very valuable, and it was because they were all there. So thank you.
Is there anything else to come before the meeting, you guys?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Ms. Roman has her hand raised.
Okay, let's go with that. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the Select Tribal Committee, I was just touching off of Chairman Case's comment regarding cultural and like visiting other things. And there's this really wonderful Native American Summer Institute that's happening. It usually happens in June at the University of Wyoming, where Native American students from the tribal schools, as they call them, air quotes, that are within the reservation boundaries, they send about 40 students over to the University of Wyoming to kind of get the feel for what it feels like to be at the University of Wyoming or to stay in a dorm. And then they get, little education pieces. And I was just wondering if maybe that's something that you wouldn't mind working on, maybe connecting you all to that group to see if you could come and have a little bit of engagement with them to talk about how the state and the tribes, connect and where they interconnect and what that looks like. Just an idea, and I apologize. I probably could have said that as a email, but it was on my head. Thank you both, and if you have any questions.
Mr. Chairman, reacting to that, I'm not sure we could hold a formal meeting there, but I think many of us would attend if asked, if we could work it in, and we'd be happy to visit with the students and faculty formally or informally. And I think that would be a positive thing. So maybe the organizers of that event, if they would like some of us to come or like all of us to come, we're happy to. What do you think, Mr. Chairman?
I think it's a great idea. Thank you for that recommendation, Ms. Roman.
Thank you. I'll send a follow-up email for connections. I think that it'll be really great, Chairman. I apologize. I think it'll be a really great opportunity to kind of let the students that are about ready to graduate, go into the university, understand, their civic duties as students of the state of Wyoming, or, citizens of both the tribe, and, what it looks like, what Indian education, what the goal of that was for, and these discussions that we're having here at Select Tribal and how they can get real meaning and understanding from it, because we oftentimes discuss them and we're not engaging with them, right? And so I think that's a good opportunity. It's just my thought process as a person who's been kind of working in this space, and it did follow up from working with Miss Ellis regarding the legislative panel that they sat on, and it was phenomenal. So I think it would be super helpful to everybody involved. So I'll certainly follow up with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, do you have anything else? Anything else from the members? Ian will throw out a draft and we'll get a reaction to it. Thank you all for coming. Look forward to having an interim, and appreciate everybody. We're adjourned.